Hey everyone, welcome to another top 10 list. This week's top 10 list was suggested once again by Evan Block. He suggested that I do the top 10 notes that everyone should have, and I broke it up into the top 10 large size notes and the top 10 small size notes. So Evan, thank you once again for that suggestion. And let me get into the list. If you guys haven't checked out Evan's page, go ahead and do so. I'm going to try to put a link to his channel in my description down below. And let's get started. Now, I know it's supposed to be a top 10 list. This week's top 10 list, like I said, is going to be the top 10 small size notes you should have in your collection. So for the top 10 small size notes, I figured this would be much easier than the large size notes because there aren't as many collectible small size notes. And right after I said that to myself, I soon realized how wrong I was. I actually even have honorable mentions this week. So, where am I going to start off with? Well, honorable mention number one, small size note that you should have in your collection. This particular one's a 1934 $1 silver certificate. The 1934 and the 1928 $1 silver certificates are known as the funny backs. Now, these aren't very expensive. They're pretty easy to get a hold of. If you get one in rough shape, they're pretty cheap. But if you're going to get one of these, what I would suggest is paying up a little bit and get a nice one. This one here is real nice. You can see the condition on this. It's not perfect. It does have a center fold there, which saved me a little bit of money. But the quality on this bill is great. The color is good, just with that one crease. The centering is good. There's no dirt. It is a really nice example of this particular bill. So you're able to see everything on this particular note. You're able to appreciate it. And like I said, these funny backs aren't that expensive to begin with, so paying up to get a nice one isn't really that tough. Of all the notes that I had in my list, I don't know how I couldn't include a funny back, so that's why it made an honorable mention. So that's honorable mention number one. Honorable mention number two is a note that I enjoy seeing every time I see it. I will stop and take a second look at it. This is a 1928 $5 legal tender. A $5 red seal from 1928. Now, one of the things that makes this bill stand out, aside from the bright red color, is the fact that the seal is on this side, on the left, rather than on the right. Starting in 1934, they moved the seal to the other side, as you can see here. Now, the same goes with the funny back. The 1928 will have the seal on this side. The 1934, this one has the numeral over here and the seal where we're used to seeing it. But the 1928 $5 note, another note, once again, if you get it in really nice shape, you can see this one here does also have that center fold, but the rest of the note is really nice. It's a clean note. It's not dirty or anything like that. It does have the center fold, a little bit of a fold over here, not much at all. But overall, a really nice note to have. Just seeing the red stand out like that always grabs my attention. It didn't make my top 10, but it's still one of my favorite notes to have. And like I said, it's not that expensive, so it should be part of your collection without a doubt. And honorable mentions 3 and 4. 3 and 4, yes. This is a $100 national currency, and this is actually a national banknote from the Merchants National Bank of Aurora, Illinois. And it goes with a Federal Reserve Bank, also a national currency. Now, you see on the top, both say national currency. Both are printed on the exact same framing. The difference in these two notes is who is guaranteeing what. Now, this particular note is guaranteed by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. So that's represented by G. Chicago is G. And the Federal Reserve Bank itself is what is guaranteeing the value on this particular note. Yes, you can get notes from all 12 different Federal Reserve banks. This is not a Federal Reserve note. This is a Federal Reserve Bank note. The Federal Reserve doesn't guarantee this. The Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago guarantees this particular one. This one's in real nice shape. I also like the number. It's a trinary, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, Federal Reserve Bank note versus a national bank note. Now, a national banknote, you've heard me talk about national banks in the past, and a national banknote put money on deposit so that they could then have money printed with their bank on there, and this particular bank is the one that's guaranteeing the value of the note. It has a charter number here, and this one it's an interesting number here because it looks like it's a really low serial number, 000128A, but that 128 actually represents the sheet number. That was the sheet number that was on there. And if there were multiple bills on the sheet, the first bill would have an A, the second bill would have a B, the third bill would have a C. So I can find bill 000128B, for instance, and I would know that that note was right here on the sheet. So it's just interesting to see notes like that. I think these are neat. I think that once you start collecting the national currency like this, they start to get addictive. I recommend probably starting with the Federal Reserve Bank stuff because there's only 12 of them, and there's pushing 15,000 different banks over here. But yeah, getting one from each Federal Reserve is fairly easy to do. Or you can do like me. I just got the largest denomination out there for these and use these as my representations of them. So those are my honorable mentions. Let's get to the actual list. Number 10 on my list. Number 10, this may surprise some people. I've got my $5 silver certificate. This is from 1934A, and this is my Hawaii note. This is emergency currency from World War II, and this was printed and distributed through Hawaii just in case Japan ever invaded. Yes, Japan attacked, but they didn't invade. If they would have invaded, they could have gone to the banks, taken all the cash, used that cash to fund their own war effort. But because we used these brown seals like this, that means with the swipe of a pen, we could simply say any note that has a brown seal is no longer going to be valid currency. That would prevent Japan from coming in and taking all the cash in all the banks. Now, the $5 note in particular is the toughest one to get. For the Hawaii notes, I'll take a quick peek at the back. You can see they've got Hawaii imprinted on the back like that. The rest of the note is the same as a regular silver certificate would have been. It says Hawaii on the side, and of course you have the brown seal and the brown numbers. Now, they did make a $1, a $5, a $10, and a $20. This one is a Federal Reserve note. The $1 happens to be a silver certificate. All the rest of them are Federal Reserve notes. The $5 note, though, is the hardest one to get. So this one, dollar for dollar, has the highest premium. You'll pay as much for a 5 as you will for a 10, almost as much for a 20. So when you think about it, you get more bang for your buck buying the 20. However, this is the hard note to get. The $5 notes in the emergency series are the key notes. So that's number 10 on my list. Number 9. Number 9, continuing with the emergency currency, I like the North Africa $10 note. This note always has been one of my favorites. I prefer the North Africa notes to the Hawaii notes because you get the different colors. These are all silver certificates from the North Africa series. There was the 1, the 5, and the 10. And for 1934A, they used a bright blue denomination marker. You'll see that on the 10, on the 5, and of course you saw that on the $1 silver certificate as well that I showed early. And this particular one, being North Africa, has the yellow seal here. Now, nowhere on this note does it actually say North Africa, but this was the money that we used in North Africa and then in Europe as well. The same principle applies as the Hawaii note. With the stroke of a pen, they could simply cancel all the yellow seals in case it ever got into enemy hands. Taking a look at the back, very familiar look on the back as well. The $10 North Africa note, a very cool note to have. And like I said, even though the $5 is the tough one, I prefer the look of the 10. Maybe I just prefer the look of my 10, but I really do like this 10, and that's number 9 on my list for small size. Number 8. Number 8, I am going with a 1928 $100 Federal Reserve note. Now, the reason I chose this particular note is the 1928 series has these stamps right here. Now, on our current currency, they used a letter to represent the Federal Reserve. But in the 1928 series, they used a number. 6 in this particular instance, what is this? Atlanta, Georgia. So that would have been the letter F on most notes, and you can see it still is because that's the F. That's what this particular F represents. But in the 1928 series, they used the number 6, and you can see the 6 is here. Starting with the 1934 series, what they did was you had the letter here, and then you'd still have the numbers here. So to see the giant numeral here, you know that's one of the first issues of small size currency. 1928 was the first year for small size currency, so that's just another reason to get yourself a 1928. Not just the seal, but because it was the first. And that's the back there. I'm always a big fan of the back of the $100 bills. That's why you notice a lot of these hundreds that I'm showing, or a lot of these notes that I'm showing are hundreds, just because I think the back is pretty cool. So that is number 8, 10, 9, number 8 on my list. Number 7. All right, number 7. What I have here is a 1935A silver certificate. Doesn't seem like a big deal. These are a dime a dozen. Well, not quite, but they are fairly cheap to get a hold of. But this note is interesting. In 1935A, in that series, what they did is they ran an experiment to put a coating on notes to see if that would make the notes last longer. So what they did was they printed roughly 1 million notes, and they gave them this designation of an R. R represents regular. This was a regular note, nothing special about it. But to find one that had the R on it, you know that was part of this experiment. This was part of the control. They printed, I believe it was 1 million regular notes, R being regular, and put them in circulation. And then when the experiment was over, they recalled all of these R notes so that they could compare how they wore compared to the wear patterns of the special notes that they were doing. So finding one of these R notes is a big deal, and these are fairly collectible. These can run $60 to $80 without a problem. The nicer ones will be even more than that. So an R note from 1935A should definitely be one of the notes in your collection. That is number 7, 10, 9, 8, 7, which means number 6 on my list, that must be the special note. This is the S note, 1935A special note. Now, what they did here is on this note, they used a different type of coating. Like I said, they printed about 1 million of these as well. They sent these out in circulation, and after a designated period of time, they recalled all these from the banks, and they would be able to try to compare the wear patterns on these compared to the R notes to see if the special coating made the notes last longer. And of course, as with most government programs, the end result was inconclusive. People actually treated these notes differently because they had R's and S's on them. And if you can get your fingers on an R note, then you definitely have to get an S note. You can't have one without the other, making both of these notes very much in demand. So that is number 6 on my list. Number 5. Number 5, I went with another red seal. This is the 1966 $100 red seal. Now, legal tender notes were done in $1 denominations, $2, well, $1 denominations were only in 1928. $2 denominations were all the way up until 1963. Same with the $5 denomination. But in 1966, the government was, by law, supposed to have a certain dollar amount of legal tenders in circulation, and they didn't have nowhere near that. So what they did to satisfy that law was print up a bunch of $100 red seal notes. That's why you get the $2 and the $5, and then the huge jump to the $100. This was to satisfy that obligation. They made the 1966, which this one is here, and the 1966 A series as far as the $100 legal tender notes. Now, most people don't even know these exist. And so when you pull out a 1966 $100 bill, a lot of people are still alive from back then, and they'll be surprised that this was something that existed in their lifetime. But the $100 1966 red seal, of course, has the same back that we're used to seeing, but with that bright red seal there, very attractive note, very cool note to have, definitely should be in your list. That's number 5. Number 4, continuing on with the red seal, This is the $1 red seal, $1 legal tender. This particular note was only issued in 1928, and it was only issued for Puerto Rico. The only way you were supposed to be getting these is if you were in Puerto Rico, and of course some of them did manage to get back. I believe there was only about 1 million of these printed, so there weren't a whole lot of them out there. There's not a lot of them to go around. Most of them, of course, have been redeemed, and a lot of them, well, think about the region. You're talking about high humidity, high temperatures, so you're talking about a whole lot of notes with a lot of environmental damage, essentially. So if you can find one of these in good shape, that's definitely a note to score. I had one that was a little rougher, and I did upgrade to this particular one. Still fairly rough as far as creases on it go, but the color is much nicer on this one. So 1928 $1 legal tender. It does have the funny back on it as well. Another cool note, another must-have for small size notes that should be in your list. That is number 4. Number three, we're going with a 1928 $20 gold certificate. Now, there's actually a $10 gold certificate, a 20, a 50, and a 100. I just happened to choose the 20 because it is one of the more common ones to get. The 20, any of the gold certificates, small size certificates, should be part of your collection. Very cool notes. Once again, most people are aware of silver certificates. They're not aware of gold certificates. So pulling out a small size $20 gold certificate will shock a lot of people. So the back, unlike the large size notes, this one has the green back rather than the gold back, but it is very similar to all the other notes from the back. But on the front, you do get gold certificate, the gold stamp, the gold numbers, and definitely a note that should be part of your collection. That is number 3. Number 2 for small size notes that should be in your collection. Stepping up a notch, 1934 $500 bill. Now, a $500 bill, these were made in 1928 and 1934 series, and they were kept in circulation up until 1969. 1969 is when they started removing the large size notes from circulation. If you're lucky enough to find one at face value from a bank, God bless you. These are extremely hot right now. Take a quick peek at the back. Now, these were meant for circulation, or they were allowed for circulation, but they were more meant for bank-to-bank transfers. But you could go to your bank at the time and ask for a $500 bill, and they'd give you one. So it's not like they were restricted to just bank-to-bank. But that's the reasoning that the back of this particular note isn't really that exciting. It just says United States of America, $500, because it wasn't specifically designed to be circulated, but there was nothing to prevent it from being circulated. You can see the price that was on it when I bought it. It's gone up a little bit from there. These are $1,500 to $1,800 now. This particular one, you'll notice, is the light green seal. This is the light green or the lime green seal. If you're going to be getting a note like this, it's going to cost you a little bit. I'd go with the light green seal. Not that there's anything wrong with the dark green seal, but people tend to favor the light green seal. So if you're going to get one, that's what I'd go with. That's what I did go with, the light green $500 1934 Federal Reserve note. Number 2 on my list. So what is number 1? Well, that should be an easy one for you guys to guess. If number 2 is the $500 bill, number 1 has to be the $1,000 bill. $1,000 note from 1934. This one's 1934A. There was also the 1928 series as well. $1,000 notes, yeah, these are real. Once again, we're taken out of circulation in 1969. Every once in a while, a couple will show up, and these are going for pretty big bucks. Much like the 500, the back of this particular note, like I said, wasn't designed specifically to be circulated, so they didn't put a whole lot of thought into the design process on the back. They simply put United States of America, $1,000. But you could still go to the bank and ask for one, and they would let you have one. This particular note, these are going for somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 now. These are really hot. So if you can get your hands on one of these, good luck to you. But that would be my number 1 note as far as small size currency goes. All right, guys. Evan, thank you very much for suggesting the list. If you guys have an idea for a list, go ahead and put that down in the comments. And if I can make it happen, I will do what I can. Thank you guys very much for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll see you again next week.